Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. It started as an ordinary evening, the kind where silence fills the house and even the ticking clock feels too loud. My husband was still glued to his laptop in the study, lost in spreadsheets and deadlines, barely noticing the soft breeze slipping through our bedroom window. I sighed, glancing at my reflection in the mirror. Just me, a loose silk robe draped over pale lingerie, skin tingling with a restless energy I couldn't name. On impulse, I sent a text, "Come over, let's play a game." It was innocent enough, or at least, that's what I told myself. He replied almost instantly. Minutes later, I heard footsteps in the hallway, slow and hesitant, and then the soft creak of my bedroom door. "Hey," his voice was low, deeper than usual, carrying a hint of mischief as his eyes swept over me. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. The air felt heavy, charged, as if the whole house was holding its breath. My heart raced in my chest, ba dump, louder with every step he took toward me. "What game did you have in mind?" he asked, stopping just close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating off him. The question lingered in the space between us, playful but loaded, and I swallowed hard, pretending to be unfazed. "Something simple," I murmured, turning away just enough to let the silk slip a little lower on my shoulder. His gaze followed, and I felt it, that spark, that dangerous closeness we shouldn't cross but were already tiptoeing toward. Then, without a word, he moved closer and sat down, on me. The sudden weight, the nearness of his breath brushing against my neck, sent a jolt through me. I froze, caught somewhere between surprise and something else I didn't want to admit out loud. Our eyes met, too close now, too intense, and the silence grew heavier, pulsing with everything unspoken. And just as the room felt like it might spin with the tension, a sound shattered it all. The door handle turned. My husband's voice echoed from the hallway, casual and unsuspecting. "Honey, I need to ask you something." The door began to swing open. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when my husband and I couldn't go a day without stealing kisses in the kitchen or staying up late just to talk about nothing. But somewhere between business trips, missed dinners, and 1,000 unread messages, that magic turned into a quiet distance neither of us dared to name. I told myself it was just a phase, that every marriage went through lulls. But nights like these made me wonder if we were quietly slipping apart, brick by brick, without realizing it. He still loved me, I knew that, but love wasn't always enough. Not when his eyes were always on a screen and his hands were too tired to reach for mine. That's why I called him my stepson. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. He was just company, a distraction from the aching silence. And yet, the moment he stepped into the room, everything shifted. There was something in the way he looked at me, like he saw me. Not just the woman waiting for her husband to finish work, but someone who still had a spark worth noticing. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, still close enough for me to feel the rise and fall of his breath. I almost laughed. "Okay?" The truth sat heavy in my chest, a mix of loneliness and longing I didn't have the courage to say out loud. "I'm fine," I lied, adjusting the robe around my shoulders. But I knew he didn't believe me. His eyes lingered a moment longer, searching, questioning. The tension hummed quietly between us. It wasn't just physical, it was something deeper, messier. Maybe it was the way he listened without rushing me. Maybe it was how he leaned in slightly when I spoke, as if every word mattered. Or maybe it was the way my pulse betrayed me whenever his hand brushed too close. We talked, about nothing, really. About how quiet the house felt tonight, about the scent of rain sneaking in through the window. But under every casual sentence was a pulse of something unspoken. A question neither of us dared to voice. "You shouldn't look at me like that," I whispered before I could stop myself. "Like what?" he asked, voice low, almost teasing. "Like you're reading my thoughts." He smiled faintly, but his gaze didn't waver. "Maybe I am." The room felt smaller suddenly, the space between us charged and fragile. And even as guilt nipped at the edges of my thoughts, there was no denying the pull, the strange gravity that drew us closer despite every reason not to. Down the hall, I heard my husband's footsteps pause, then retreat back toward the study. A reprieve. A warning. A reminder of the line I was dangerously close to crossing. And yet, I didn't move. Neither did he. We just sat there, suspended in a moment that felt far too dangerous to last, and far too intoxicating to end. The silence between us grew heavier, stretching so thin it felt like the smallest word could snap it. He hadn't moved from where he sat, too close, far too close, and every breath I took seemed to catch on the edge of something dangerous. My husband's voice still echoed faintly down the hall, a reminder of the world we were supposed to belong to, yet here we were, wrapped in a moment that didn't feel wrong, even though it absolutely was. "Does he ever look at you the way you deserve?" he asked suddenly, his tone quiet but edged with something sharp, jealousy, maybe. I swallowed hard, my fingers twisting in the silk of my robe. "It's not that simple," I murmured, though even I didn't believe the words. "It is that simple," he said, his eyes locking onto mine with a boldness that made my heart stumble. "Someone should notice you, all of you. And if he won't," he stopped himself, biting back the rest, but the unfinished sentence hung in the air, dangerous and heavy. The room felt hotter somehow, as if the air itself had thickened. My pulse raced in my throat, traitorous and wild. I should have told him to leave. I should have put more distance between us. Instead, I found myself leaning just slightly closer, drawn in by the way his voice dipped lower, the way his gaze lingered on me as if memorizing every inch. "Do you ever think about what would happen," he whispered, "if we didn't stop ourselves?" My breath caught. The question wasn't supposed to be asked, and I wasn't supposed to imagine the answer. Yet images flickered uninvited in my mind, his hand brushing against mine, the space between us dissolving, a line crossed we could never uncross. A floorboard creaked down the hall. My husband had moved again. The sound jolted us both back to reality, though neither of us shifted away. "This is wrong," I whispered, though my voice lacked conviction. "Then why does it feel so hard to walk away?" he murmured back. We stared at each other, hearts racing, breaths unsteady, the room pulsing with a temptation we both knew we shouldn't touch, and yet, we were already too close to pretend it wasn't there. The storm outside had grown heavier, raindrops racing each other down the windowpane, and the rest of the house had fallen into a deep, unsettling silence. My husband's study door was still closed, the faint glow beneath it the only sign he was still awake. But here, in the dim light of my bedroom, the world felt narrowed down to just us. I stood by the dresser, pretending to fuss with the edge of my robe, but my hands trembled slightly. I could feel his presence behind me, the warmth of his breath, the weight of his gaze tracing the shape of my shoulders. Neither of us had spoken for minutes, yet the room was alive with everything we weren't saying. "Are you sure about this?" he asked at last, his voice rougher than usual, thick with something unspoken. I turned to face him, and for a moment, the space between us felt almost electric. "I'm not sure about anything anymore," I whispered. And it was true. The guilt, the longing, the aching emptiness I'd tried so hard to bury, it all swirled together now, impossible to untangle. He stepped closer, slow and deliberate, until the distance between us was barely a breath. My heartbeat thundered in my chest as his hand hovered near mine, not touching, just close enough for me to feel the heat radiating off his skin. "Tell me to leave," he murmured. I should have. But the words refused to come. Instead, I just stood there, lost in the deep pull of his eyes, the way they held me as if I were the only thing in the room that mattered. The air grew thinner. My breath hitched. And then, almost without realizing it, I leaned just slightly closer, enough to blur the line between almost and too much. The house creaked somewhere down the hall. A soft thud echoed, footsteps? Or just my imagination? We froze, our faces inches apart, hearts pounding in perfect, reckless sync. If the door opened now, everything would change. Everything. And yet, neither of us moved away. Then, the unmistakable sound of the study door unlocking. He's coming. The door creaked open slowly, every second stretching into an eternity. My breath caught as the light from the hallway spilled into the room, tracing over the edge of the bed, the silk of my robe, the closeness we had no business sharing. His hand was still hovering near mine, a whisper away from crossing a line we couldn't uncross, and I could feel his heartbeat racing as fast as mine. "Are you still awake?" my husband's voice floated in, casual and unaware. I forced myself to step back, putting inches where there had been none, but the energy between us refused to fade. It clung to the air, warm, breathless, electric. "Yes," I said, my voice trembling just enough to betray me. "Just, couldn't sleep." The door pushed open wider, and there he was, my husband, still in his work clothes, exhaustion etched into his face. His eyes swept the room, lingering on me a little too long, then shifting to the figure standing near the bed. "What are you doing here this late?" he asked, his tone light but layered with suspicion. He shrugged, too easily. "She asked me to help her with a game. Just keeping her company." A silence followed, not the heavy, charged silence we had shared moments before, but a colder, sharper one. My husband's gaze darted between us, searching for something neither of us dared to name. Then, in a moment that felt both reckless and inevitable, the younger man stepped closer to me, not enough to be obvious, but enough for the tension to hum again. And that's when everything shifted. "You think I don't notice?" my husband said suddenly, his voice low and cutting. "The distance. The way you look at me like I'm a stranger. The way he looks at you." The words hit like a slap, because they weren't wrong. "I've been trying," he continued, stepping further into the room. "To fix things. To bring us back. But maybe I was too late." The younger man opened his mouth, but my husband held up a hand. "Don't," he warned, his voice trembling now too. "I want to hear it from her." The room spun around me. My throat felt dry, my heart pounding loud enough to drown out the rain still drumming against the window. This was the breaking point, the moment that would shatter everything or rebuild it. "I don't know what I feel anymore," I whispered, the truth tumbling out before I could stop it. "But I know I've been lonely, and I know he sees me in a way you don't." Silence. No one moved. And then, to my shock, my husband took a deep breath and stepped closer, not to me, but to him. "Then maybe it's time we stop pretending," he said quietly. "All of us." The meaning behind his words hung thick in the air, layered with possibilities none of us had considered, and before I could process it, he closed the distance between us, his next words changing everything: "Lock the door." The room felt too small now, as if the walls themselves were inching closer, pressing the truth out of us whether we were ready for it or not. The rain outside was a steady drumbeat against the glass, but inside, the silence roared louder than any storm. "Lock the door." My husband's words hung in the air like a spark over dry wood. It wasn't anger this time. It was something heavier, resignation, maybe. Or resolve. I turned to look at him fully, trying to read the meaning in his eyes. "What are you saying?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. "I'm saying I'm done pretending," he said, stepping closer. "I'm done walking past you every night like you're invisible. Done watching from the sidelines while the woman I love slips further away." The younger man shifted uneasily, glancing between us. "Maybe I should go." "No," my husband interrupted sharply. "You're part of this now. You've been part of it for longer than either of us wanted to admit." The tension crackled, dangerous and raw. I could feel both of their eyes on me, one heavy with history, the other with temptation, and for the first time, I felt the full weight of the line I had blurred. Tears stung my eyes before I could stop them. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," I confessed, voice trembling. "I was lonely. I felt like I was disappearing in my own marriage. And I hesitated, my gaze flicking toward the younger man. He reminded me I was still someone worth looking at. My husband closed his eyes for a long moment, breathing deeply as if steadying himself against the truth. When he opened them again, there was no fury, just a kind of raw, vulnerable pain. "Do you still want us?" he asked quietly. "Because if you do, then I'll fight. But I need to know you're still here." I stepped forward, closing the distance between us, my hands trembling as I reached for his. "I never stopped wanting us," I whispered. "I just forgot how to feel wanted." The younger man took a small step back, something shifting in his expression, regret, maybe, or acceptance. "Then maybe that's my cue," he said softly. "I never meant to break anything. I just couldn't ignore what was right in front of me." The air shifted again, softer now but still charged with everything unsaid. My husband nodded slowly, not in forgiveness yet, but in understanding. "Maybe this was the wake-up call we needed," he murmured. And there, in the middle of that storm-soaked night, 3 hearts stood trembling at the edge of decisions that would change everything. The damage was done. The truth was out. But in the cracks left behind, something new, fragile but real, was beginning to take shape. The question was no longer what happened. It was what we would choose next. The rain had softened to a gentle drizzle by the time the storm inside us began to quiet too. The 3 of us stood there in silence, the echoes of everything said and unsaid still hanging in the air. My heart was still pounding, but now it wasn't from fear or guilt. It was from the weight of what we had just survived, and what still might be rebuilt. "I don't want to lose you," my husband said at last, his voice breaking through the quiet. "Not because of work. Not because I forgot how to hold you. And definitely not because I didn't fight hard enough for us." Tears slipped down my cheeks before I could stop them. I stepped closer and took his hands in mine, feeling the warmth of his skin, the familiar strength of his grip. "I don't want to lose you either," I whispered. "I just needed to feel seen again. Needed to know I still mattered." He lifted my chin gently, forcing me to meet his gaze. "You matter more than anything. I should have told you that every day." His eyes softened then, the anger gone, replaced with something deeper, something that felt like home. "Let's start over. Right here. Right now." Behind us, the younger man cleared his throat softly. There was no bitterness in his expression, only understanding. "I think this is my cue," he said quietly, stepping back toward the door. "I never wanted to come between you. Maybe I was just the reminder you both needed." I nodded, gratitude shining through the tears. "Thank you," I whispered. "For reminding me I was still worth noticing." He offered a small, knowing smile before slipping out into the hallway, leaving the 2 of us standing alone again, just as we once were, but somehow changed. My husband turned back to me, stepping closer until there was no space left between us. "We can't erase what happened," he murmured, "but maybe we can write something better from here." And then, for the first time in what felt like forever, he kissed me, not rushed or desperate, but slow and certain, a promise sealed in the press of his lips. All the distance, the silence, the aching loneliness dissolved in that single breathless moment. Outside, the storm faded into a soft, rhythmic drizzle, like the world itself was exhaling with us. Inside, we held onto each other, hearts beating in sync again. "I missed this," I whispered against his chest. "Then let's never let it slip away again," he said, holding me tighter. And as the night deepened around us, we stayed wrapped in that embrace. No more secrets, no more silence, just 2 people choosing to fall in love all over again. It wasn't a perfect ending. But it was ours. And that made it beautiful.